Oh, thank you so much. I'm greatly honored that you all showed up for this. I'm a Bailey, so a lot that name kind of came over when the potatoes ran out over there, and we grew potatoes here. So I'm really just honored beyond belief that you guys would show up to listen to me. So uh, I've got about 60 slides, and if we get through half of them, I'll be ecstatic. So if you guys, I could, there's not much, she said plenty about me. There's nothing else to talk about me, but let's talk about the caves that I go to. And I know that, one of the things that I find interesting about caves is not that they're limestone, but they're the absence of limestone. That I go and look for the voids that are in limestone, not the limestone, although I'm grateful that the limestone makes such great caves. So let me find my slideshow and get it going. And it's always with Zoom, it's always a trick to make sure that I'm showing it. Is there share screen? Okay. So let's fly through this the best we can. Come on, there we go. Okay, so we're going to just start with Kentucky, and this is our geology. You can see over there. I'm not sure if Europe uses the same geologic names as we do, but we're going to kind of look at the Mississippian, which is the Carboniferous period, and so and follow the mouse. Hopefully you're seeing my mouse. This is the bluegrass region. I'd been asked about the horse region, and that's an older limestone here. It's the Ordovician and Silurian over there, and doesn't have a lot of caves. It's epikarst. It's at the end of the karst cycle, but that's all those springs we talked about earlier. All those springs are what makes Kentucky bourbon. Kentucky bourbon. We're going to look at. We have this, and we're going to look at how the state was made, which leads to all these great caves. So this right here is a dome. This was pushed up, and we're going to look at how Kentucky and its geology was put together really quick, and then we'll look at it. And over here is a basin, and in between is the places where I do most of the caves. We have caves all over the state, but this is close to my home. And I guess if I'd had better cars growing up, I would have gone other places, but this is where I went. So just to put it in perspective on where we are in the United States, here we are again. Here's that dome, and here's that basin. This red line is the edge of the glaciers for the Ice Age, and that's kind of important because that's where we got all the water from to make the caves. And that's really just kind of where we start. The blue that you see in Kentucky is all the high karst region. So there's plenty of limestone, but those are the ones that are most likely to make caves and springs. Here's a close-up of that section. And again, here's where we're going to be looking at stuff. My home is right in here. And then right in here is the karst and the cave area that I go to. And mainly purely geography. It's a close drive. There's a lot of other places that have great caves. Right down here is where Mammoth Cave is, longest cave in the world. And an extra hour drive, and I go sometimes, and it's just that's a wonderful experience. But I want to talk about the stuff I'm doing. So really quick, here is what Kentucky looked like. This is the late Paleozoic, the beginning of the Earth. We're looking at 500 million to 251 million. I found these ages on the internet and how exact they're getting. As you can see, we started this upwarp. Here's that dome I talked about, the bluegrass region, and then here's that basin, which is called our Western coal fields. That's a ton of coal over there, and as a young man, I went over there and worked. It used to be good work. Over here, you can see where some continents crammed into us, and this is actually the last thing that broke when our Appalachian Mountains were formed. It's a Pine Mountain overthrust, and then we have the Cumberland Plateau with foothills. Plenty of caves over there, but again, we're on this side of the state. Really interesting. Like I said, if I'd had a better car, I'd probably be talking about these caves. Really cool. But we're going to be looking at right over here. This escarpment that's been pushed up and formed. with modern today. Of course, the water has come through and worn through it. And so we can take a look at how this was put together. So basically, Kentucky broke in one place, but the rest of it just kind of molded like hot plastic. We don't need to know this concept later on, and I don't. And if you already understand how a dip and strike work on an escarpment, basically water runs downhill, but with caves, water also runs along the hill at the bottom. So when the water's running downhill and you're in a passage, you're going to have a canyon passage because it's trying to cut down like any hill. But when it runs along the side, you're going to find these tube passages. So when we get to that part, this is kind of cool. You can know where you're at on that escarpment, which direction you're trending in the passage by the shape of the passage. And it just was a cool thing that I threw in. This is a cave that I wound up called Frenchman's Knob. And the SCCI, the Southeast Cave Conservancy, started leaving the South and coming up to Kentucky, making us part of. We're the last edge of the South, and this was the deepest pit in Kentucky at the time. 2 more have been discovered, so I've got the distinct honor of rappelling down to the bottom of the deepest pit in Kentucky 3 different times, which is a really cool thing. There's a younger me over there when I could haul a ton of kids down into places like this. It's a pretty cool bat hibernaculum. The bats are down in there. There hasn't been much bat research in the last 5 or 6 years since I've been in there, but the SCCI is getting a better partnership. We have now starting to hire full-time people. Is always a lot better than being, you get a really good focus with stuff. So I'm looking forward to where we're going with that. I inherited this cave because no one else showed up to do it. They bought another cave called the Dalio entrance to Mammoth Cave, which pulled a lot of volunteers away from this cave, and they all went down there because it was closer to home. And to be honest, who doesn't want to be part of a 400-mile cave? It's a pretty cool thing to do. So I wound up, I got this one because no one else showed up, but I'm really proud that I could do this. So I'm going to look at it. So since I got it, I started to want to understand why it was made the way it's made, because it's a pit in the middle of a place that doesn't have a lot of pits, or especially pits that big. So I found this map, and Diana George made it back years ago before the computer. And Angelo, her husband, was a geologist that was ahead of me in the career, and just one of the old guys that was a great mentor to me. Anyway, this Brownsville Channel. Here's that escarpment that we were looking at on the edge of that dome in the very beginning of the talk. And this Brownsville Channel was a river that cut through there, and most of the geologists have studied it, have looked at it for the coal, because it's a coal producing seam. But this filled back up and has a really ragged limestone in there, and it's a really unique thing. So I started looking at why it's put together and what it is. So first thing I did was pull the aerial photography. Here's our little pit that we looked at right there. And as you can see, the limestone certainly affects the topography. How the world is made is based on that different type of limestone. And you can see over here is a huge sinkhole plain, and we'll look at that more in a minute, but a very different type of topography. Here you can see all these sinkholes, or all these pink things, while over here, not a lot of sinkholes. There's a couple of caves, they're all pits, they're all raggedy at the edges, so you've got to watch the rocks and stuff. The thing I find most fascinating too is how young the rocks are up on top. So I don't see many rocks that young, the Pennsylvania era, and that's a fascinating thing for me. So again, you can see how this affects the altitude and stuff. So pulled the lithology for it, and I just wanted to look at some of the rocks, and I found this is really fascinating. Here's those young rocks, the Caseyville Formation, but limestone up on top. And then we have this Harrodsburg sandstone. And with cave formations, it's crucial that you have a sandstone cap. That's what keeps the water from getting in and just dissolving the limestone as a big sheet. So that allows the channels to form underneath. And we're so lucky that when you have an ocean, you have this beach, and it covers the limestone right up. And it's just nature just is all, I'm in awe every time I look at it. But anyway, looking at this channel, we're looking at the Hardinsburg sandstone, which is on top, which is protecting the cave and allowing it to grow. Then we have the Haney limestone underneath, which is what the cave is in, the passage is formed. But then you hit this big cliffy at the bottom, and then when you get to the bottom of the pit, the cave goes sideways. I don't have any maps of the cave, unfortunately. They're cavers are odd about sharing stuff. Some are the most generous, and others you couldn't pry anything out of. So but anyway, I find that a fascinating thing and how that goes. This is looking at that same limestone by age. So we're looking at all this purple, which is my Mississippian age, and then my yellow is my Pennsylvanian. And there's not a lot of Pennsylvanian exposed in this part of Kentucky, so I really like being able to touch it. It's just an odd thing. I also was fascinated how this channel affects the groundwater, and these are groundwater basins. Dr. Quinlan was older than me, but Joe Ray, the man who trained and worked on them, was a great mentor to me, and they did a ton of this. I worked on some of this up here, but the idea that this channel is such a heavily influence on how the groundwater flows is just a really cool thing. And then of course that's the limestone and that sandstone, but the water is really going through the limestone. And again, when you add it to the surface water, you can see how effective it is on there. It's draining into here and then draining in over to here, coming out all the springs and everything along that area. So really, on a rainy day, the woods are really kind of a wonderful place to hear water running everywhere. So this is the next cave that I wound up with, and this had been owned by an old caver, J. Pat Stevens, and again another mentor and tormentor both. He was a wonderful, neat old man, and he really pioneered finding this cave, and him and his friends did a lot of the discoveries. And we used to eat dinner once a month and talk caves. And one day I said, what are you going to do with it? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, sell it to me and I'll make sure I take care of it like you did. And then I wound up being able to meet people, and we formed a nonprofit, and the nonprofit wound up taking it off my financial liability. And so that was and then the other half of that is that it's open to any cavers that want to help support it, but they don't necessarily have to. You can, if you've got a friend that belongs to the Conservancy, you can go with them. You don't have to be a member. It's get in the cave. That's kind of the goal of the Conservancy. He wound up selling it to us for what he paid for it in the 1970s because of this vision. And so I would say it'd probably be about 13,000 euros for a 14-mile cave. So it's well, let me put that in meters. A 14-mile, it made 20 kilometer cave. And anyway, it was just a really cool thing. This is a canyon. So remember what we talked about. This would be going down that dip. So you would be kind of a northwest to southeast, or southeast to northwest type thing. The beauty of this cave also is, from looking at things, is there's also a channel that's cut through the escarpment. And I think that's really kind of, what's the chances of this happening twice on the planet within miles of each other? And of course, we're looking at probably 60 kilometers across on this map. So this is called the Moortown Formation. Here's those escarpments that we looked at that were pushed up on the edge of that dome, that circle around that dome. And then here's the three entrances. Two of these entrances you get into, the third one's blocked, but this is Big Back Cave down here. And if you can tell, most of the caves in that area are up on that escarpment, and here we are down in there. So just to look at it from a photograph, these are the drainage divides on the surface. Here's our cave down here, and it goes across the drainage divide, which I find fascinating. And you can see that it's a hard area to farm. Most of the places where these trees are are really big sinkholes that are unfarmable. And so down there, people farm as close to the edge as you can. In fact, Big Bat has changed significantly because of farming practices. They're used to, you try to convince farmers to leave that buffer of trees and things around their sinkholes, so as much silt and stuff and water don't go into the cave, but they've got to make money. And if it's tillable land, they're going all the way to the edge. So the cave is silting up right now, and it's holding a lot more water. It is a flood cave, so it floods. Really quick look at the geology. We're looking at the St. Louis limestone in the screen. Here's our Moortown Formation cutting through. And then our cave, Big Bat, is in the Paoli with the sample sandstone as a cap rock. And it's a pretty cool. Here's the whole 14-mile cave. And there's another cave right over here, Chris's cave. And the intrepid go out here and try to connect these two, but it's a pretty sketchy crawl. You could drown doing it. So we're going to look at a smaller part of the cave because here's what we own. We own 3 acres down in this sinkhole. Unfortunately, no one had a vision when they did this, and so we're a landlocked piece of property. So we have to have easements to get through there, and there's always the landowner negotiations never seem to end. And I'm sorry. Oh, anyway, here's the topo of the property, so we can take a look. Here's some of these sinkholes that we'll look at and stuff. I'm going to look at the geology map, but it's always good to just kind of look at things. Of course, there's a kind of the corner is where everything is, that's the center of society. There's a store and the fire department. Out here is what I think is fascinating to look at it from the geology. If you look at the southern half, you look at these sinkholes and how they correlate and line up with the passages. And here's another one here. There's another one big here. And while there's no real work on it and no real studies, it just kind of leads a couple of us to think that this is where the cave got its water to start building, and that everything is going to the north, that the passage's growth will go to the north as opposed to heading south. I can't say for sure, but it just feels that way. There's more rivers that are constantly running and stuff down in this part of the, I know right here is a river that goes across that's always filled with the largest blind fish I've ever seen. And so it's not as much, the rest of the cave is very unstable on water. This is Price. I spent a couple of years taking biologists around through caves and stuff. And this is kind of a special image. This never happens, according to Price. We have these little brown bats with these tricolor bats intertwined, hibernating together. And supposedly he had never seen this before, or so, and I know much less than him. So, for sure, I would have never even looked up. It's bats and stay out of their way. The reason we were watching the bats and watching these changes is we had this really dreadful disease, white nose syndrome. And this is what it did to those bats. Price, again, we went there for 4 years, and basically it's not an extinction, but it's called an expatriation. It pretty much killed everything in there. We went from 1,000 bats to 40 straggling past. A very brutal death. They starve to death because they wake up to groom, and then they don't have enough calories to carry them through the winter. So it's as you can see, the fungus grows on them. And anyway, that was a really, as soon as I get the cave, then suddenly I'm tasked with a tragedy. And so anyway, I want to show off another canyon, but also Stephanie here is a young volunteer that I'm hoping, right now she's just really been invaluable to the project, and I'm hoping to leave it to her so I can get down to 2 caves and maybe just be an assistant to her. And I mean, my heart will never leave this cave. So anyway, oh, sorry, wrong direction. This was one of my projects. the guy working the computer was Ben Chinneberry, and he and I worked together with the city. He was a contractor for the City of Louisville, and he bought this really expensive LiDAR collector before anyone knew what it was, and wasn't finding any work. And I said, well, I know what to do with it. And so I convinced him to bring this really expensive piece of equipment down to the cave, and then I got as many, uh, I, the goal of the project was to put a line on a kid's resume with 1 day's work. Instead of all the kids that can't do a free internship, here's a way to work with a $50,000 piece of equipment and get the data that you created so you can do a project or show that you've done something. And it's been a really great project because I get a lot of kids that like I said, I'm able to put a line on their resume. Um, uh, Ben has gotten very successful. This project really put him in the limelight. He got invited to a lot of projects, and now his department is probably twice his size, and he doesn't have any time for his caving riffraff friends. But Wes, it was a huge success. Him and my daughter have put a little life together, so I'm really happy with that. And Ryan went off to work in the mountains and is getting to work where he wants, and I still give him do a letter of references and stuff. So here's what the first data set that came out of there is, and this is this is that first passage, and what I want to look at here is I like the profile better. This volcano is what we call this, and we're going to look at that. That's going to be something, and then this room 1 right here is something we're going to look at a little closer to. So just kind of see where they are in perspective. The plan view, you can see where we had shadows where you didn't quite collect the data too well, and we blew out where we collected too much data and stuff. But there's 2 volcanoes here. And also the thing that I found most interesting was the step in the ceiling. And why, I still don't know why the everything dropped, but something's changed. Maybe the water direction in the passage shifted or something. I wish I had all the time in the world to do these things. This is what the LiDAR looks with room 1, and this was also done by one of the people on the project. So they took the data home and finessed it. You can see people, if they stood still, it comes out a lot better. But it was a really cool project, and like I said, it's a way for people to take data and play with it. This is just a dumb thing that I did. Here's that main passage, that big lead, but I also found that nature kind of steals the shape and reuses it. This is very snail-like or slug-like. Just like the idea that on something the size of my thumb, and then something that's the size I can drive trucks through, nature kind of uses the same shape when it creates. And you can see with the LiDAR, you can see where the water passages are draining through the cave, and your feet are always wet in that cave. This was just a dumb thing I took a picture of, but for some reason I just stuck it in there. This is that volcano that we talked about that I made a point to show, and the reason we call that is if you look at the floor, there's all these sticks and stuff, and so wherever the water is coming in the cave, it's down below the passage we looked at and is exploding up with a hydrologic pressure up through this volcano here. And I mean, you can't be there when it's a flood cave. If it's going to rain, you just stay out. I mean, before the internet and stuff, it was just if water was predicted within 3 days, you just didn't go to that cave. But now with the internet, things are a lot better. You can time your trips a lot better. But I find this a fascinating thing. Here's looking at the same thing with the LiDAR. And one of the things, and again, staying on the limestone, is how well you can define. I had a kid try to write a program using the LiDAR and VR headset to be able to map where the contacts were between the different limestone sections. And it worked outside, but there's just not enough light in a cave. And the amount of batteries, the amount of people you would need to carry the batteries to get the light you need is just impossible. This scan was done in complete darkness. And what we did is took the reflective indices of the limestone, and so when the laser hits it, you bring it back, you know how reflective it is, and then we kind of assigned a grayscale to it and made a fake black and white. So just a way. This is one of the tubes in the cave, so you know you're along that dip and strike. So you're going along the bottom of the escarpment. It's running parallel to it. So I just and you can see how it muds up and stuff. It'll drop you in a heartbeat. Everybody slips and falls through there. But I just wanted to show that type of passage in the cave. It's got waterfalls. I mean, again, it would be in a canyon, but this is where one of those sinkholes has found a way into the cave, and just a great place to take a break and stuff. This is just a neat scan of one of the entrances to the cave, and then this is a karst window. So you've got a sinkhole that's poked all the way down to the cave where light comes in, and just a great place to put a light and stuff like that. And it's a neat, really neat place to take someone that's brand new to caving, because it's so otherworldly and just something you would never see on a regular day. Of course, soon as if you gave me a $50,000 piece of equipment, I'm taking a selfie with it. So we wasted a lot of valuable wear and tear on that. I don't have a timer set, so I'm assuming someone's going to interrupt me on this. So I'm just going to keep going until that happens. This is the third cave, and we used to go to this cave all the time. It's a fun little cave. It's got some really neat rappels, and it's a great place to teach someone that's brand new to vertical caving. And the owner had us quit going. He said, I can't do it. And so he lives close by, and I just took him to lunch and said, how can we fix this? And it turns out that there were some right-of-way issues with the property that weren't his problem, but he kept getting sucked into it, and his wife had fallen ill. And so he's offered to sell it to me and my wife. And so we bought it, and we're the third cavers probably since the late 1980s. So we're the third cavers that have entrusted with it. The trend seems to be selling it for the same 1980s price. So we'll probably pass it on for the same price when it's our turn to be done with it. It's a beautiful cave. So I just found that the name of this formation is Big Ben and Little Ben. And we just went there the other day and pulled around. There's 3 different caves. There's a cave underneath this where you're looking at. There's a cave below it that you have to rappel down into, and beautiful stuff. There's a lot of salamanders that can live in there. I found this one fascinating because a predator tried to get him, see where he's been bitten into on the side. When salamanders fight among themselves, they cut each other's tail off where they store their fat. But that's another whole nother cave story where I spent a year with a salamander doctorate stuff. And then this stuff, when you get up close, how crystalline this cave is. It's really, really fascinating. I don't have any pictures in the back where it's more brutal, but this place is new to me, so I haven't really built a big inventory of it. Before, we'll if we have time. And like I said, I'm looking at 9 minutes. Does that sound about right to everybody? Anyway.
I'd say Ken, keep going. Don't worry. I'll tell you and I'll give you warning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't want to rush and feel. Okay. Well then, yeah. Let's just finish this, and then we'll pull around some other stuff that I have and go from there. This is a cave I don't own, but this is the cave that really went from just a guy that lived out in the country that went to the cave on Saturdays with his friends to becoming a true scientist, to where I started looking at them as this understanding. And so I've been going to this cave for 40 years, and everything I've talked about, every cave I've shown you, if there was only one cave I could go to for the rest of my life, it wouldn't be those, it would be this one. It's a horrible thing to say, but my heart is in there so much. It's just I've just done so I've learned so much there. The sample sandstone is the top of this one. And then and here we are in the Paoli again, which is what the other cave is. And so that's what the sample sandstone looks like when you find it out on outcrops. It weathers with these holes in it, so it's real easy to spot when you're walking around, and that kind of tells you that you might be in a cave area. Um, there's the geology of this cave, and then of course here's the cave, and this one was one I looked at regionally. So we're going to look at this one. I want to look at it's a little way I looked at it a little differently. Um, anyway, we're looking at a knob or a small hill with the cave on top of it, which is a really kind of interesting thing. Um, so we're coming in closer, and you can see here's our sample sandstone. This little scrap is what's protecting our cave. If it had worn away, and then our entrance is right in here in this sinkhole. And then of course here's our lithology again, our sample sandstone here, and then the beaver, and then the St. Genevieve down below. St. Genevieve's a beautiful limestone. If you go west of me, that's where all the caves go to. It's a really cool thing. The cave has a rich history of human history. One of the guys that had taken me there, they had a devil worship thing, which I pretty much, I think they just went there and did drugs. But they had, that was kind of the 70s. And then prior to that, it had been in the War of 1812, it had been a saltpeter mine of potassium nitrate. They had used the bat guano in there to make gunpowder, or the ingredients. There's some evidence that the Native Americans used it for, they mined the gypsum in the back. No one in around me knows what they used it for, but they mined the heck out of it. You can see in the passages, especially small ones, the smoke where they've used it. It was also, up until the 1930s, it had been a show cave. And I think they charged a nickel for you to go and go walk around. But they used torches and kerosene, candles, whatever they could use. And you can see all of that in the history. I found actually reeds from early Native American torches in there where the rats have used them for nests. So you're looking at stuff that I guess would be 300 plus year, older and older. I mean, I don't know how old it would be, but I've got a constant mapping project on this cave, and I never want it to end because I want to have an excuse to go there. It's only open for 4 months. It's a gray bat hiberniculum, which is a really rare thing. I think in Kentucky, we only have 9 gray bat hiberniculums, and I've been lucky enough to map 2 of them. This one here, like I said, it's these are just some of my maps and stuff, but it's a really unique place. It's a dry cave. Again, it's only open 4 months a year, and it's kind of neat that you can go and the bats get it, and it's kind of a neat thing. This is just kind of a quick picture of it. It's mostly grazing land because it's so hilly. And so it's not a real big agricultural area. Over the hill is a constant threats of rock quarries. But they're really easy to work with for a rock quarry. So it's not really a huge concern. You just go over and talk to them. And anyway, this was a pit we found while exploring around on that cave. And it was really neat getting to discover and explore a brand new spot. It's like walking on the moon, being the first person to put your foot in there. And anyway, that was a neat thing. This is a sinkhole up on top of that hill. I mean, it's so big you can't fit it in a picture, and it would look just like a forest if you didn't get up and see how big they were. One of the things that I looked at with this cave is I spent a whole summer just looking at just this one passage. It was at an elevation of 750 feet. And what I did is I pulled out the elevation model for that part of the world, and I took everything that was at 750 feet and turned it red. And so what I was looking for was a period of stability in the erosional past of this area. So you can see, especially to the north, these huge periods of where there was no downward erosion with the rivers. The water table was not, the surface water was not dropping. And so that led to that really stable passage that we were looking at here. And I'll come back to it. And you can see how much of those terraces, I mean, they're still existing there. and I'm going to be honest, I tried to learn sedimentology and try to understand what the terraces were, but there's just nothing left up in here to cram a new skill in. Some of the springs down here run into the river down here, and they ditrace down to it. There's also a definite fault block there. So the earth is cracked and moved around there too, which lets the water get in. So what I did is I looked at these old models and I traced down the old riverbeds, and I noticed that the river had, now this part's erased, I just faked it, but you could see the old river had gone around these outlier knobs as this escarpment's retreating. And I found that the cave that I've been looking at was never going to be the biggest cave in the world. What it was just basically a river cutoff, a shortcut for the river and a river bend, which is kind of a neat thing to find. And that you can see what we're looking at here. And this is kind of cool. Here's that original crack where the water got in and then it made its tube. But it left that tube formation and formed this triangle. So it's not a tube and it's not a canyon. It's a triangle, which has been found up in Indiana to be north of me. Those caves are water table caves. They're not above the water table like you'd find coming down down our dip, or a tube like you would find along our strike, but something at the actual river level. And you can see here it is right here. And I found that just a fascinating thing. And then if you notice here, it started this keyhole slot where the river started dropping down below the cave and abandoning it. You can also find these anastasmosis formations, which are an indication of seasonal flooding. They're like the Amazon River, where the water, there's so much water, it gets out of its bank and forms these braided streams, except for they're underwater. They fall off the ceiling. They're just everywhere in this cave. And so, like I said, what I found was of course, the river eventually migrated down here and goes across there and stuff. But this one right here, I just try to put this in every one. Joe Ray was one of those guys that came ahead of me and did things with so much less. And this is down at Mammoth Cave, but it has nothing to do with the caves, but it's just such a fascinating map of and just a way to honor all those people that were making something with nothing in front of me. He took a disc, like a 5-centimeter disc or something, and he connected the contours until he found all of the abandoned channels of caves, and they're eroded off. So the lids are off. They're just valleys. But he found this whole cave building episode that's almost erased. And just really with just a pencil and basically a coin and a map. And I'm just always in awe of his work. And of course, like I said, he was just drugged me into so much smarter realm. He was just a guy that really helped me become a smarter guy. So I've run through the slides, but I do have a couple of resources that I want to look at and just kind of share with you. And we'll go with that. And let me see, where's my Zoom meeting? Should be, new share, yes. Let's do this one. This was a fly through. This isn't my work. This is one of those kids that you get that's really special. She took the LiDAR data, and instead of taking the stills like what we were figuring out, she took it and she made it into a video. And just really, I hope the video's playing well for you guys. She just did this remarkable job. This is a video that we did with some people that played. Some of the kids came to do some, and by kids, these people are in their 20s. But this was the cave that my wife and I own, Roberts Hollow. The other one was the other one, and it's just a neat cave to be able. Like I said, I don't have much photography yet on this cave, but it's just this otherworldly place. The guy down in the corner, Dave Black, has just been a wonderful mentor to me. Like I said, caving is, I guess, that is probably one of the neatest aspects of caving that I've gotten in my life, is that, in jobs and stuff like that, people are so competitive and all of that. And in caving, I found all the mentors that I could have ever wanted in life. And it's just been one of those opportunities that I never thought I would have. And it just, really, really a great thing. I'm looking to get back into my screen, so I'm going to see what I can do to figure out how to.
And are you looking to stop sharing?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a different screen that's not really coming up.
So you might have to stop share and then stop sharing. And then start again.
Come back. Okay. Oh yeah, I see what's happened. Yeah. Okay. So do I just?
You can go back to share screen, and then choose.
Yeah. Well, no, I've got there were so many Zoom windows over the window that it would never. It was seeing something else.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, now I think we can.
Are you happy to?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was looking
Brilliant.
at all the stuff. This was one of the projects, and if you get the free time, it's in the. I think I gave the link. This is where we took the LiDAR and then projected it into these 360 videos. So you've got the way to interact with it, and so you can look. And this is our entrance into Big Back Cave, and JPath, the guy I told you about, really found this entrance, mapped it, and then dug it out with a backhoe in probably the late 70s, early 80s, and then put this pipe in, and then we had a horrendous flood and everything filled back in, and it's been a interesting time keeping this door open. But you just click on these little icons and it'll send you, so now you're looking back out that pipe and down into the cave. If you notice the darker stone, well, like I said, while it's a fake color with our thing, that's would be the sample sandstone. So when you find that's the roof is laying on the floor, which is I don't know, and something you get used to, but it's not like something you want to think about. To the black hole, Dave, the mentor, the guy that I showed you a picture of, is Dave Black, and so we named it after him because we had to make it big enough to fit him through. And so to go through this hole here, you kind of have to blow all your air out, and then it's kind of scrunched through. But there's 14 miles on the other side. Here's this, like I said, this is that sandstone that's fallen off, but you can see the different limestones in here, and you can see two different erosional patterns. I find this fascinating. Is the drips down as the waters come down as a secondary one, but you can see these original scallops, which show the water flow that first came in here. It's really a fascinating way to look at the cave. And like I said, this is on the internet. You can get anyway. These balls are what we use for the scanner to register the scans. And like I say, the belly crawl is what's coming. But
Ken, just to warn you about the time. Are you?
Oh, that's fine. I can knock off any time. Like I said, this is just another one of those.
Okay, whenever you can, because we'll have a few questions then.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let me go back to my screen then. Is that what?
Yeah, you can stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And I can see there were 82 people in attendance today, and a lot of them are cavers and geologists and people with an interest in this field. So thank you very much. That was very insightful.